Okay, guys, this is going to be a short one. Hopefully you're working on that three-paragraph compare-contrast essay, and you're going to be doing a really good job with that. Today we're just going to cover two progressive reformers, Ida Tarbell and Upton Sinclair. Ida Tarbell is a journalist, and she is going to be working for a magazine, basically never marries, and she is from Titusville, Pennsylvania. Her dad, if you remember, that was the site of the first commercial oil well. Her dad was in the oil business, and when John D. Rockefeller was rising to power, he wanted to buy her daddy out. He didn't want to sell, and so Rockefeller said, okay. But remember, Rockefeller had horizontally and vertically integrated, and when her dad needed to sell the oil, there was no place to sell it because Rockefeller owned the refineries. So he was kind of between a rock and a hard place. Where do you go? You have no place to sell your oil. So he goes back to Rockefeller and says, okay, I've got to sell. And Rockefeller basically gave him a very minimal amount, much less than what he had originally offered. And her father was ruined. So she became a journalist. She decided to write about the kind of dirty practices that John D. Rockefeller engaged in. And she writes a history of Standard Oil. Starts it out as magazine articles and then put it together in a book. The result is, in 1911, the Supreme Court, using the Sherman Antitrust Act and ultimately the Clayton Antitrust Act, is going to break up Standard Oil. So yay, Ida. So now we've got two Idas. We've got Ida Tarbell and we've got Ida B. Wells. And the way I always remember is tar and oil. So it's easy for me to remember. This is her book, and I actually have it. If you want to read it, just let me know and I'll get you a copy. Okay. This is Upton Sinclair, and Upton Sinclair, also a writer, and he was interested in the immigrants that were coming in and the poor working conditions that they were finding when they were going. One of his quotes, "The pen again is mightier than the sword," drawing from Shakespeare, and that was the case with these muckrakers. So what he's targeting is the meat packing industry in Chicago, and he actually went and worked for several weeks to get background information. He is going to write about the conditions. This is a quote from his book. There would be meat that had tumbled out on the floor in the dirt and sawdust, where the workers had trampled and spit uncounted billions of germs. There would be meat stored in rooms, and thousands of rats would race about it. A man could run his hand over these piles of meat and sweep handfuls of dried rat dung. These rats were nuisances, and packers would put poisoned bread out for them. They would die, and then the rats, bread, and meat would go into the hoppers together, basically making sausage. Pretty awful. So when he wrote this book, people read and were outraged against the meatpacking industry. They realized they were getting sick from tainted meat, from dead animals being processed. And Theodore Roosevelt ultimately is going to read this. And when he does, he is sickened, and he is going to push for legislation. You can see here in this political cartoon, it says meat scandal, and you've got Theodore Roosevelt holding his nose. He is disgusted. Here it's got investigation. Okay, so you've got all this, and here you in the background, you've got Washington. So when you're analyzing this cartoon, you can see that something is going to be done. The president is disgusted. He thinks it's a scandal, and he is going to go to Washington to do something. And what they did was they passed the Meat Inspection Act of 1906 and the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. So we're going to have a Edpuzzle about the jungle, and that is going to be your assignment for today. Basically, watch that Edpuzzle, answer those few questions, and finish that essay.